trying to have lunch with a colleague. All right, I left. I have literally pulled over to a side street so I can make this video. Okay. I believe that the recording exists, and I know Clark does too, and I appreciate him clarifying that to everybody. I believe that the recording exists. I'm not sure the court ever had it. I'm not sure the court ever needed to have it. And this to me is the judge saying, please stop bothering the clerk. Please stop bothering the clerk. They don't have it. You're annoying them. They're just trying to do their job. Judges tend to be, or good judges at least, tend to be pretty protective of court staff. And I think he's just saying, like, stop bothering these people. I also think this is kind of a baller move. And it's a baller move whether you think the recording helps, whichever side you think it helps. Because if you remember back in his order where he unsealed it in the first place, he cited a bunch of law that said that when people file motions for sanctions, that is something that the public has great interest in, and the public deserves to know what the basis for sanctions is, because that is a very serious thing to ask for. And so there's he's basically saying nobody can backpedal now. If you really want to use this as a basis for sanctions, you're going to have to let people hear it. And Sarowitz, if you really don't want people to hear this thing, or you think it's just going to fade into the background, it's not. So he's putting everybody on the spot here. I keep thinking back to, and I'm in the car, so I can't look it up because I'm already wasting time. But I'm not wasting time. Just I got to get back to work. But in the declaration, I always thought it was curious. In the declaration of Claire, who we now know as Claire Ayub, she does not. In her declaration, she says she had this conversation, but she doesn't say in the declaration what the content of the conversation was. Sometimes when you file a declaration about something that happened to you, you're like, we had this conversation on this day, and he said this, and I said this, and he said this. And she didn't even touch the content of the conversation. Now, of course, that would have been hearsay in a declaration. And I don't know whether the court would have considered that on a sanctions motion or not. But the recording is hearsay too, because it's an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So I continue to think that part of the strategy here was, let's give as little information as possible about the provenance of this recording. And I think part of that is because of all of us. Ezra Hudson knows that as soon as this thing comes out and we've got the general time frame and whatever they're talking about, that some brilliant person like Bocce is going to go out there and figure out exactly what day this was and figure out exactly where everybody was and figure out whether it was an illegal recording or not. And I think they wanted to avoid that. And so maybe this is calling their bluff a little bit. I'm trying to remember if Wayfarer ever asked for this thing to be sealed. I know they didn't ask for it to be continually sealed because it's been unsealed. But I can't remember if they ever made the ask. Maybe they don't care about this recording coming out. But I'm sure they have it. Obviously they have it. But I still continue to think that this was a decision of, we want to utilize this, but we have to be really, really careful because this could get us in trouble. It could get Claire in trouble, all that. And I think this is probably an issue that they've been thinking about since the very beginning, because this language about Sarowitz is in the complaint, I believe. I don't know if it's in the first complaint, but it's definitely in the amended complaint, and I think it's in the second amended complaint. And so I'm sure they were always thinking, will we ever be able to get that into evidence at trial? And it's like, probably not, because it was probably illegally recorded and it's hearsay and, all kinds of other reasons. Can we get that? Is it relevant? Can we use it for impeachment? They've been thinking about that since the beginning of, like, I don't know, we're going to have to figure out whether we can actually use this or not. But what we know we can do is put in our allegations that it occurred so people can see it. But I think what happened is when they decided they wanted to use it to support their motion for sanctions, it got a little bit more complicated and it got acute real fast. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I mean, I guess technically Lively's people could say, we'll withdraw it as a basis of the motion for sanctions. But I think if I were Wayfair, I would say, oh no, we're going to let everybody, you wanted everybody to hear it? Let's let everybody hear it. This case, for the first couple months, I was like, oh, this isn't all that strange. This case is fucking weird. It's crazy. And it's because of us. But, they only have until Friday to, to come up with a plan. God, what I wouldn't do to be on those phone calls between everybody.